Thank you again for inviting me to testify. It's been almost more than a year now since we've been together, and I appreciate the opportunity to come back. I also appreciate the fact that this committee is still very focused on the market design questions, even as we work through a lot of the operational changes and reforms following Uri. There's still a lot to be decided, to be asked and to be decided with regard to market design, and so we appreciate the impetus this committee is putting on that. The concern that we have that's is going forward, and it's been reflected in some of the statements made already, is that yes, that not just the issue of reliability, but also the balance of that with cost. We are definitely concerned about, from our perspective, about load growth, and also, if the EPA gets half of what they want in terms of the regulations that have been recently passed, it's going to limit our ability to build new generation, and it will cause some generation to retire. So that's certainly a concern, but the more immediate concern that we have is how much are we paying to keep the lights on? What's the cost of that? Because if you look at California, their rates have gone up 50% in the last 5 years. Our residential rates have gone up 20-ish% in the last few years, and there's nothing we see that is in the near term that's mitigating that. It's not just basic inflation. There's basic inflation as a part of that, but what we see also is that we're moving from a system where we have a lot of baseload generation to a system where we have solar, wind, batteries, and gas that's balancing that, right? And it's kind of like the analogy I've been using is if you move away from a system that has if you have a car, for example, right? That car, you have a car that runs 100% of the time, right? That's typically what we expect out of our cars, right? Well, we're kind of moving towards a system where, okay, you have a car that runs 50% of the time, that's your wind and solar, and it has free fuel, which is great, but that's balanced by the fact that you have to have a backup option, right? You either need a taxi or you need a second car to be there when that 50% car doesn't work, right? It's not turning on. And so, at what point is that system more expensive, cheaper, more expensive than the system that has than your 100% car? Even if your 100% car costs a lot more than your 50% car, right? And our concern, going back to modeling that I did 4 or 5 years ago, is that we may already be passing that point. That what we did, and this is reflected on page, page 4 of my testimony, but that 50% renewable grid is fundamentally more expensive to operate than the grid that, than the current grid we had about 4 or 5 years ago, which was about 25%. Just looking at it from a basic cost perspective. And so now there's a lot of factors that go into that, right? But I think that's still kind of proving true. We've seen, wholesale prices going up a lot recently, and some of that is, of course, due to the way the grid's being operated and a lot of the changes that have been made. But I think, again, there's this fundamental question of, what's the right balance here? And we just want to impress upon the committee that, some of the studies that were implemented by HB 1500, the cost allocation study that's due in 2.5 years, the study that's supposed to be done every year but wasn't done previously, which is, again, looking at the cost of backup power, right? We hope that's going to get done this year because it's due December of every year. That's an important question to ask, is how much are we paying to back up the system, right? Not just how much are we saving in fuel costs, but how much is we paying to keep the system up. And then also, of course, looking at the pricing, the study that's supposed to be looking at the pricing structure that's due next year. These are all critical questions, and I'm going to go back to what Governor Abbott wrote in his letter in 2021, 3 years ago, that we should look at, directed the PUC to consider allocating the cost of ancillary and reliability services to wind and solar and resources that can't guarantee their availability. Well, it's been 3 years and we haven't even begun a study on that, or at least not that I'm aware of. ERCOT is looking at the cost of ancillary services right now, and very appropriately so, looking at how do we do that optimally. But again, cost allocation is not a part of that. So we just want to make sure that element is not forgotten in this discussion moving forward. Thank you.